winners? Let the pros show you how to make money. General Manager Al DeMarco, a regular contributor on Fox Sports, MSNBC, and Comcast Sports TV, brings over 25 years of handicapping experience to the table. CEO Steve Budin, the author of Bets, Drugs, and Rock and Roll, is the man responsible for creating the online betting industry. Together, they lead PickNation.com, your number one source for winners.
Only 5 weeks left to go in the NFL regular season, but we are warming up because there's still plenty of winners to be found on the betting board. Hi, everyone. Al DeMarco here along with Steve Budin, and this is the Pick Nation Report, the only nationally televised show where we break down all of your NFL action from a point spread perspective. We're not doing any fluff pieces here. We don't care what you're wearing. We don't care what the players are doing off the field. All we care is who's going to make you money. And the one dominant theme this entire season, through 13 weeks of play so far, it has been through 12 weeks of play so far. It only seems like 13 weeks. Through 12 weeks of play, the underdogs continue to rule the roost in Vegas. They have covered 9 out of 12 weeks. I've said it before and I'll say it again. 25 years as a professional sports handicapper, Steve, I have never seen underdogs in the NFL have this type of sustained run covering and having an advantage against the odds makers 9 out of 12 weeks. The underdogs are 18 games over 500 so far this season.
And the prices on the games aren't coming down. And a lot of the people wonder, why is that? If the underdogs keep winning, why don't we see the prices come down? And the reason is because the perception is still that the favorites are going to win, that the customers are still out there waiting for that week when 10 out of 11 favorites come in. And you know what? It just hasn't happened, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen.
I call it suspension of disbelief because naturally everybody out there, gamblers, a lot of handicappers, sports services alike, everybody gravitates toward the favorites. And you keep seeing these dogs barking week after week. And like you said, sooner or later, everybody keeps going, yeah, but this is the week the favorites are going to come in. This is the week. Fact is, it hasn't happened, guys. As I said, 9 out of 12 weeks so far this season, the underdogs have had the advantage over the odds makers. Of course, listen, if you're betting the favorites, you don't need the favorites to have an overwhelming majority. You just need that one winner to come in. Listen, last Sunday, I had my best bet, my highest rated play on the Atlanta Falcons. Bought down the half point from 2.5 to 2. Watched the Packers come back, tie the game, and the Falcons come back, get the game-winning field goal. The favorite gets the cover. One of your top crews, the New York crew, last Sunday had the Baltimore Ravens, a team that was up 17-3 at halftime against Tampa Bay. Tampa comes back, scores with just about 3 minutes and 5 seconds to go in that game, makes it a 17-10 game, laying 7.5. But of course, you wisely told everybody to go ahead and buy the half point. You walked away with a push. And again, it just goes to show you the value of buying insurance when, in my opinion, when the line in college or pro football crosses 3, 4, 7, and sometimes 10.
Well, you have to understand my mentality going into that game. 4 winning NFL Sundays in a row. And I had plenty of bankroll at my disposal, and I wasn't going to let a half a point determine a game. As it was, I'm watching that game from underneath my couch, watching that. You know how it's going to turn out. You know they're going to score at the end. For some reason, Baltimore didn't find the end zone in the whole second half, and yet we were able to squeak by with the push because we, spent a little extra money, got that insurance, and didn't try to be geniuses.
No, and you've said it many, many times. You use the power of money, in this case, buying the half point as insurance, either up or down, depending on whether you're on the favorite or the underdog, to buy a little peace of mind, to buy a little insurance, especially since you see it so frequently where those lines fall right on that 3, 4, 7, and 10. Now, never would you buy, and I see some clowns in this business, they tell people to go ahead and buy the hook when the line's 14 points, 17 points. Are you kidding me? If you can't win by 14 points, you don't need to be worrying about the half point when you're laying it with a favorite.
And I've seen people buy off of 5, a completely dead number. There is no 5s. You show me the last game that ended 5. It doesn't happen. 4, yes. 4.5, yes. 3.5, yes. 5? Ridiculous.
Absolutely. Listen, guys, I've been a professional handicapper, as I said, for 25 years. I started my career actually as a sports reporter, so I used the experiences that I gained from being in the locker room, covering athletes. Really, when I break down games, I do it from a statistical standpoint, a personnel matchup. I'm not real big on all the computer mumbo-jumbo. I'll tell you a lot of trends here during the program, but that's not the deciding factor when it comes to me picking games, winning and losing. And I've won 8 straight football seasons, college and pro, coming into this. What's interesting about this show, not only are we the only show on TV to break down these games from a point spread perspective, but we have the yin and yang. I just told you how I break down games. You have a totally different perspective. As a former bookmaker, grew up a son of a bookmaker. Wow, that really kind of sounds weird when you say it that way, doesn't it?
That's actually the nicest thing anyone's ever said about me, so
son
keep
of
going.
A bookmaker. But I've heard the other things they've said about you.
Yeah.
But also the guy that really created the offshore sports book business as we know it now some 20 years ago, and that is Steve Budin. So you have a whole different perspective.
Right, so I go ahead and go with my sources. These are the customers that I've dealt to over the years that have earned my respect. A lot of them had been chased by me because obviously they were too successful. And now I take that power and I turn it against the bookmaker. And obviously we've been very successful over the last 4 years, showing a tremendous profit, which, I have to tell you is an anomaly in this business. You look at handicappers over 4 or 5 years, and they're almost all losers. And you look at our company, and we're able to keep the winners on our site. If we have losers, we get rid of them. And I think that's a very special thing about Pick Nation.
Exactly. With PickNation.com, as you can see right there. Listen, guys, I'm the general manager of the site. Steve is the CEO. And I can't tell you how many handicappers I've run off over the years. Because if you can't win, not every day, because nobody wins every day, but if you can't turn a profit consistently over the long haul, then you have no place on our site. And listen, there's a lot of good quality handicappers out there. We've brought them to the site, and that's why we feel PickNation.com, not only the world's largest online sports gambling community, but the best out there because of the quality of the handicappers we bring you. With that being said, before we go on more about PickNation.com, let's head to the phones for our first caller today. A steady caller to our program, Jeff, calling from Pittsburgh. How you doing, Jeff?
Good. How you guys doing?
Good. So which game do you want to hit on today?
Well, the first game I want to ask about is the Cowboys and Colts. And I want to know, do you guys think there's any value in this line right now? It seems like Dallas is, even though they lost on Thanksgiving, kind of gave the game away. Seems like they're playing better right now.
Yeah, I would agree that they've definitely taken to this new coach. And not just the new coach, but also, Al, don't you get the feeling like these players, not just in Dallas, but in Minnesota, they're playing like to show the world that it wasn't their fault. It's the it wasn't my fault theory. That it was the coach's fault, and now that the coach is gone, all of a sudden they can excuse out all of the bad play. I kind of think that's what's going on in Dallas. But the interesting thing about this game to me, Al, is we see Indy in a position that I don't remember ever seeing them in. It's almost like desperation time for them. This is really a must-win. They need this game. They're back in the race again, where they were ahead of the AFC South. They're now making a race out of that, and it'll be interesting to see how they respond. But I feel, when Peyton Manning has a must-win and he's at home, you either play Indianapolis or you pass on the game.
Yeah, this is an interesting game and an interesting price because you're right. Cowboys 2-1 straight up, 3-0 against the spread since Jason Garrett took over. And you're right about what you said about the coaching change. One of the reasons I went with the Minnesota Vikings last week, that was my second play. Not as big as Atlanta, part of a 2-0-1 sweep last Sunday for me. Like that shameless plug, by the way.
I love it.
But one of the reasons is that, from being a guy that used to be in locker rooms and saw what happened, when you have a coaching or managerial change, it's like a breath of fresh air comes sweeping through the locker room. All the guys that were in the doghouse are out of the doghouse. More importantly, all the finger pointing stops because the guy that they crucified, he's out the door. Happened with Wade Phillips, happened with Brad Childress, and both of those teams 4-0 against the spread since the coaching changes. But I always have a difficult time going against Peyton Manning at home, even though, and I pointed this out last week going into the San Diego game, even though Peyton Manning, after a straight-up loss in his career, I think the stat is only 19-27 against the spread, so not exactly a money-making position at all. I do worry here about this Colts defense. It's undersized. It hasn't played well, hasn't put much pressure on the quarterback. But if I had to put my money on Peyton Manning or a Cowboys team that's playing well but has John Kitna at quarterback, I'd lean a little toward the Colts. Not a game, though, I bet on. This is a game I think that's better just to be watched. It's one of those marquee games that just don't have any interest putting my own money on.
I agree. What's the other question that you had?